Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger and my friends. Today we're talking Street Fighter 6 again, and specifically talking some thoughts on the beta, character specific thoughts. During the beta, I played a lot of Chun Li, and Chun Li, despite being one of the most famous video game characters of all time, was wildly far and away the least played character during the entirety of the beta. How could that be, you wonder? Well, despite being a popular character, Chun Li mechanically is definitely the single most complex character that was in the beta. I'm not going to say in the game as whole because we still got a lot more characters getting announced yet, but she definitely had to work harder for basic stuff compared to some of the other characters in the beta. So some people ask me just to give my thoughts on the character, just, pros and cons of the character, not necessarily like a tier placement or anything like that, but just what she's all about. To preface, while I've certainly dabbled with Chun Li over the years, I'm hardly what you would call a Chun Li main. I'm much more well known for playing big characters or grapplers, and unfortunately that playstyle just wasn't represented in the beta at all. So I figured of everyone, well, why not do Chun Li, because she's a cool character, right? So the positives, one thing I gotta say out of the gate is Chun Li is basically super tuned towards neutral play. Poking, counter poking, just controlling the screen. She basically has an option for every possible scenario, which is great. She potentially pays for that in other ways, which we'll talk about in the negative sections, but for the most part, as long as you're on the ball and as long as you understand what's going on, you basically always have an answer as Chun Li. The pokes themselves are good. The options for pokes are good because you have different pokes for different situations. If you're just looking to toss out a button, forward and medium punch has like less than half the recovery of crouch medium kick, and crouch medium kick can potentially lead to better combos. It obviously hits low instead of mid, right? But if you're looking to poke and not get counter poke back, that's the button for you. And speaking of counter pokes is, especially in this game with the bigger hurt boxes, a lot more than just the raw range of the move, right? She has stuff like stand light kick, which is great at catching with buttons, and forward and heavy kick, which actually crushes a lot of lows. It just completely goes over them. So if someone's spamming crouch medium kick, you can easily go over it and hit them in the head. So to give an example for stand light kick for counter hitting, as you can see here, it's a combo. It's wicked fast at 5 frames, and it is very generous at catching a lot of whiffed limbs. Here, you can just do it, catch the whiff limb, punish counter, and you can either option to select just tap forward, and if you get it, then you get drive rush, and if not, then nothing comes out. Or you can buffer in EX legs or just about anything you want, right? If you can see and whiff punish, that's great, but you can also just buffer stuff in, and if it catches something, then it'll catch something, and it's hard to whiff punish back on purpose because it recovers very fast. The only person within the confines of the beta anyways that I found had a comparable button was Ken's stand light kick, and it's just a beast at catching just raw buttons. Don't go too crazy spamming it, sure, but it is definitely a strong tool. Forward heavy kick as well has some decent range, crushes all lows, so if they go for a low, you're just going to go completely overhead of it, and as long as you space it, it's safe. That's one of the problems I had early on, is I was doing it too close. It is punishable point blank, but it's only -4, so as long as you space it, they can't jab you out. And my mistake in the beta was, I did a couple times I got punished, and then I kind of dropped the move, and only later did I realize my spacing deficiencies. But yeah, it's a powerful move and mildly spammable, at least as long as you're willing to lose your turn after it gets blocked. And if it connects and it's a punish counter, it has effectively a crush counter state, if you will. It causes the knockdown and causes the combo that you see here. So for neutral, you have the brute force buttons like forward medium punch, crouch medium kick, stand heavy punch as well. And you also have the more specialized buttons like stand light kick and forward heavy kick. Chun is just a big toolbox in neutral, basically. And that's before we even get to the Kikokens. As Kikoken is not the best fireball in the world, let's put it that way, but I feel like the Street Fighter 6 incarnation is definitely one of the better ones. The heavy one, as usual, is very fast startup and dissipates very quick because all of her Kikokens dissipate. They don't necessarily travel the full screen like other projectiles. So you can consider it basically an extended poke. And it's really good at exactly that. It extends her effective range in neutral. And the light, it remains basically a poor man's sonic boom, but still, a poor sonic boom is a lot better than a lot of regular projectiles, right? Very easy to toss out and walk behind and then just see what happens, right? Sometimes you get lucky and they get hit, and you'll be blessed with enough stun to either hit him with a poke or a poke into a full combo, depending on how on the ball you are, basically, during the moment. Basically, you'll be tossing a lot of Kikokens in neutral with Chun, because that's just part of her game plan. That's how she controls the neutral. Speaking of controlling the neutral, thanks to things like Tencho kicks, that's her up kick series you see right there on the screen, it's actually pretty difficult to jump at Chun as long as Chun's on the ball. As far as I can tell, every version of Tencho kick is air invulnerable on frame 1. So no matter how deep the jump in is, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick, all versions of Tencho kicks are all invincible to jump ins. And the motion's the really good part, because it's just down, down kick, right? No charge needed, no Shoryuken motion, just down, down kick. The only thing stopping me from hitting every jump in during the beta is I'm just not used to that motion as an anti-air move, right? Like, it's actually better than a Shoryuken, like on paper anyways, but when you're not used to it, you don't think of it as much. But once everyone gets used to it, ideally, like, no one should be able to jump on Chun if she's remotely on the ball at all. Not to mention the fact she's also blessed with one of the best button anti-airs as well. Stand medium kick will basically crush everything but the most deep of jump-ins. It is specifically angled just to screw over jumps. So between Tencho kicks and that, as long as you're, looking for the jumps, you should be able to stop every single jump coming your way. So we got the pokes, we got the anti-airs, we got the serviceable fireball to help control neutral. Like, she's got a lot to work with here. Some other good things in her favor. Yes, she's a charge character. I know not everyone's in love with that, right? But one of the things we have here is, for spinning bird kick specifically, wickedly fast charge times. Now, usually spinning bird kick is not as much charge time as Kikoken, but in this game, man, it's trivial. Like, you have enough time to build up charge off just crouching lights on reaction, let alone anything more advanced than that, right? So it is very, very easy to get your bird kick combos off. Versus, say, like the launch of Street Fighter V. Remember, people having extreme difficulty doing even the basic bird kick combos off mediums. I remember well because it was one of my first big videos all those many years ago. But in this game, man, hey, don't worry, it's going to be pretty easy. Another good note about Chun Li, which I was shocked to learn wasn't the case for the rest of the cast, I just didn't really check. All 3 supers of hers, level 1, level 2, level 3, all of them are invincible till the active frames. So that means all 3 of them are viable as reversals, right? Especially if you're in burnout, right? That becomes your only reversal as you have no drive gauge to do anything else. It turns out for a bunch of the rest of the cast, that's maybe not how it generally works. A lot of the rest of the cast, turns out, like at least one of the supers is not invincible. For Chun Li, though, all 3 are invincible. So the defense is there. And the last positive thing to mention is the stance, which is also, I guess, the hardest thing to mention. It's part of the reason I think people are not playing Chun Li. It's very different, and I think it's a little hard to utilize fully. In a lot of matches earlier on, I was doing a lot of like poke into stance cancel into stance move into special, right? And then I stopped doing it because it's very easy to mash out of, turns out, which we'll talk about later on. Basically I was only using it for combo fodder whenever I get like a drive impact or something like that. So I think it's going to take time to fully master and utilize that. But the one big bonus about it is every single move that is special cancelable in the stance does not, and I repeat, does not use charge. So if you have a Kikoken, a fireball, or a spinning bird kick, you just hit back forward punch or down up kick. That is it. You need no charge at all for any move from a stance. So that means if you do like light kick from stance, which is a quick toe tap, you can just go back forward punch and you immediately get a Kikoken. You do not need even 1 frame of charge. You can just do it right away. And I feel that's going to be one of the big game changers of the character as we get better. If there is an open beta in the future, I would definitely like to try Chun Li again just to, expound upon what I knew already and just build upon it, because I feel the stance is definitely underplayed. Stuff like stance heavy punch is a double hitting overhead, which is very easy to hit confirm, by the way. And so you can just go double hitting overhead, boom, into heavy spinning bird kick. And it's also completely safe on block. So that's really good. And speaking of that, though, stance does have a bit of recovery, but you are allowed to block while you're in the stance itself. So while you can't return to neutral necessarily right away, you're always able to defend yourself. Although if you're like kind of point blank, the fight will then become trying to get out of stance. But then again, as long as you do any move, you just cancel into heavy Kikoken, basically make yourself safe. So that's another easy way to do it. Now, Chun Li doesn't have a lot of big juggle opportunities necessarily outside, like, say, spinning bird kick, the X version. But one of the good things is the heavy lightning legs. So the heavy version of lightning legs provides a meterless juggle. Now, it's best served in the corner, because in the corner you can get stuff like EX legs, things with a relatively fast startup, and EX legs in the corner does a lot of damage, as you can see in this example. Now, outside of the corner, not so much, but at the bare minimum, anywhere on screen after a heavy lightning legs, you can always get a level 1 or a level 3 super. So just the fact that if you can manage to land it at all provides you some really strong damage and reach. Also, the move very strong when the opponent is in burnout, because it's -3, which is safe on block, so it's not punishable. And if they're in burnout, that means +4, that means it's plus on block. So look at this example here. So palm into legs, which is a natural combo, don't need counter hit. So now in +1, here comes crouch jab, which beats out whatever they were trying to do. That's a counter hit combo, although it wasn't a counter hit, but whatever, right? Let's look at the hits and go from there, right? So when they're in burnout, it does a lot of chip damage. It's plus on block. It's pretty savage. And while not gameplay related, last positive I want to give is just a lot of Chun stuff looks cool. Like hit into stance launch into toe taps and then like combo out. It's just neat. I like it a lot. So that's a lot of the positives for Chun, but it's not all roses, right? Obviously every character has strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk some of the downsides of Chun Li in this game. So for all the talk of neutral control and all the options she has to do all these things all over the screen, there's a price to pay, and I feel that Chun Li is a lower damage character. Now sure, in the right situation you can land big damage. We've already seen a couple examples in this very video already, right? But I feel like her overall big damage potential is lower than the rest of the cast. Not significantly so, but you know, noticeably so. And her options to land big damage are lesser than a lot of the rest of the cast. From my time playing her, outside of, you know, like big punish situations, the only time she has available to her that I've noticed to land appreciable damage is if she can tag you with a stand medium punch raw. If she can't, then she can't combo into EX spinning bird kick, and if there's no EX spinning bird kick, you're not getting a lot of damage. The majority of her damage comes from whatever off of EX spinning bird kick, or if she manages to tag you with heavy lightning legs. There are a couple scenarios like heavy kick Hazanshu, as without any counter hit or punish counter, it naturally combos into crouch medium punch, which means it goes into medium spinning bird kick or EX bird kick, so that is great, but it is very slow startup. So unless you do like the hardest of the hard callouts, it's very easy to jab out or anti-air or anything like that. So outside of these few specific scenarios, generally she's not going to land the big damage like some other characters will. Now granted, she'll get her damage in bits and fits through like, you know, buttons and pokes and all that kind of stuff, where she'll get more opportunities to get that damage than most other characters, but still, the opportunities for big damage, to me, seemingly enough, are rarer than the other characters in the game. At least in the beta, and of course everything's subject to balance changes in the future. Another thing that's a little frustrating is EX Hikoken. So that's her fast fireball that actually goes full screen, and unlike the other characters, it doesn't knock down. Now I know that's kind of how it works sometimes, but it basically feels less strong and neutral due to it. It can lead to certain combos depending on certain stance combos, where you can combo out of it because it's plus on hit point blank, but it just feels a little disappointing overall is what I gotta say. One thing, which is another thing that is usually the case for Chun Li, is I tested out all the jumps, and of the beta characters, she easily has the worst jump in the game. Her neutral jump is 2 to 3 frames slower, depending on the character. Some characters have faster neutral jumps than others, like Kimberly's is the fastest, for example. And Chun's, well, Chun's is the slowest. And for diagonal jumps, so forward or backwards jumps, hers is a full 4 frames slower than every other character in the beta, meaning it is just that much easier to stop her, anti-air, poke her out, whatever. Her jumps are just the worst in class. Once again, this is a fault in Chun Li in other games, so it's not new, but it is still a downside. You know, she has the strong neutral, so therefore the idea is she shouldn't be leaving the ground. She needs to win on the ground, but it was the beta and we're all bad and we're all scrubby and we want to jump a lot. So if you want to jump a lot, Chun-Li's really bad at it. Another thing is in my time, and I learned as I was going, but I feel like Chun-Li suffers a little bit more than the average character to drive impact. Due to the rules of how drive impact works, if you catch it, that's great, and you react in time, that's great, but even if you react in time, certain moves do not let you react back. You're just done for. And unfortunately for Chun Li, that is some of her better pokes and pressure. Like say if you use stand heavy punch, which is one of her better pokes, the only thing you can cancel into is stance. And if you cancel in the stance or if you don't, it doesn't really matter. You're done. That's it. You can correctly hit the button when you see it all you want. It just cannot be canceled into the drive impact. So if you know someone's kind of spammy on drive impact, you're basically just not allowed to use the move, because if it gets caught, you're done. Now, for Chun Li specifically, I did sort of figure my way around this in time. Basically, I had to change the moves themselves that I was using. Never put myself in a situation where I think there's even a chance that a drive impact will come in. I had to do stuff like just crouch lights to give myself enough mental time to catch it and then drive impact back, because those are drive impact cancelable, so that's great. But it remains to be basically a lot of Chun's best neutral tools. If you get caught randomly, you just don't get the chance to drive impact back. So you got to be really on your toes against spammy drive impact players for Chun Li, perhaps more so than a lot of the rest of the cast. Because a lot of the rest of the cast, from what I have noticed, a lot of their big pokey moves, it's not a big deal and they can just easily cancel the drive impact. It's a very divisive mechanic to be sure, and we definitely need more time to play around with it and see what's going to happen. Besides that, the stance itself, once again, random drive impact and you're trying to go into stance, you're going to get hit, but it's just very slow startup. Like stuff like the slide, you have to wait for the animation to finish and then you can go into slide and then it works, but that's just much too slow. The idea of slide is to slide under stuff on reaction, but if you catch a fireball on reaction then go into stance to try to slide, normally if you are already in stance, yeah, the fireball will go in your head, but that's only when you're 100% in stance and done. So if you try to slide under a fireball in reaction, what's going to happen instead is the fireball is going to counter hit you in the face while you're trying to go into stance, which is certainly less than ideal and kind of removes the point of the move itself. And more to the point, stance is so slow, basically anything in the block in the stance can be mashed through, no matter what it is. Basically everything is too slow to stop even a basic jab. The only thing that's potentially not is stance light punch, but the problem is everything pushes them back so far when you do like a normal into stance cancel that the light punch can't hit anyways. So kind of what's the point? Like you can trade with moves that aren't even particularly fast in and of themselves. Like this example here, I go in, hit my button, try to stance cancel, go for a poke, and then I just get kicked in the head, right? And this is certainly not as fast as crouch jab or anything like that. So the one thing I feel out of stance is the startup could definitely stand to be a bit faster than it currently is. You can also mash out of basically anything into heavy kick legs, but that's less an issue because heavy kick legs is very strong, as we talked earlier in the video, so that's kind of fine. But basically, one of the through lines here is Chun is somewhat mildly susceptible to just getting mashed on. One thing that isn't a negative though is seemingly in the context of the beta anyways, everyone has the same health values, so no more low health Chun Li. That's kind of cool. So to finish up here, both some closing thoughts and also a couple of things I wish I knew in the beta. I know now and I want to go back and test, but the beta's over so we can't. One of those is just catching random people landing in fireballs. So just like Guile or anyone who could throw a slow fireball here, a lot of times people are going to jump, land in the fireball one reason or another. And no, normally you can't follow up from that. But what I've since learned is basically if you do a drive rush mid-screen, it basically gives the juggle property to any next move you do. So in that situation where someone lands in a fireball, you can just drive rush and combo out as long as you're on the ball enough to recognize it for what it is. And now that I know that, there is so much damage I left on the table and I kind of regret that, right? But I just didn't know it at the time. Other things like potential combo routes, normally after spinning bird kick, the EX version, I would just always go for heavy kick Tensho or a super. That was it. I've now learned after the fact, in the corner, you can actually do her toe taps and do a heavy punch, land, then super. So it's a bit of combo optimization, sure, but it's another whole different combo route I had no idea was possible. And of course, there's a bunch of things I don't know that I don't even know I don't know them, right? Because that's the nature of the game, and the drive system is so expansive that we're going to be learning things for a long time to come. But for Chun Li specifically, if you're looking to play some Street Fighter-ass Street Fighter, just non-stop neutrals and buttons and all that, she is definitely a good representation of exactly that. Just strong neutral, strong buttons, strong counter-poking opportunities. She has basically, and this I think applies to a lot of the returning casts, Chun Li seems to be like an ultimate version of Chun Li. The only thing I can knock, and it's not even necessarily a fault, is pretty much every version of Chun-Li feels pretty different from every other version of Chun-Li, versus like Guile is Guile, Ryu is Ryu for the most part. Like, they just fit like a glove regardless of the game. Chun-Li is always a bit different every game to every game. She certainly feels very different from Street Fighter V Chun-Li, who was very different from Street Fighter 4 Chun-Li, who was very different from Third Strike Chun-Li. I stated earlier on in the video, but of the beta characters anyways, she's easily just the most complex character. Both on just a basic playstyle wise, and just you gotta learn all the fancy stuff like the stance mechanic and all that. So she definitely was the least played character in the beta. The only one that even comes remotely approaching her was Luke. I didn't fight too many Lukes either, but I definitely fought less Chun-Li's versus, say, like the Jury army, which was totally out there. Tons of Juries, tons of Kimberlys, tons of Kens, for sure. Those were the most popular characters. That all said, though, well, those are my thoughts on Chun-Li as they stand. Once again, I am certainly no hardened Chun-Li pro. She's always just a character I played on the side for fun. Not my main deal, but we didn't have no Honda, no Zangief, no Lily, no Manon, no Marissa in the beta, so Chun-Li, that's the one I picked. So I hope you found this video informative and or entertaining, and if you did, hey, drop a like, I guess. I don't know, up to you. But otherwise, we're at the end of the video, so thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Street Fighter.